Hello and welcome back. So today we're going to be looking at line combinations and specifically guys who are playing with really good talent that are having exceptional years in terms of their line chemistry and the way that they're performing, but may be available for you on your waiver wire. So as you can see on your left, you can see some of the top line assignment waiver ads that we have. And I'll go through each of them. This is in no particular order, even though they're numbered. All of these are potentially good options depending on ownership levels, your league size, and all that kind of stuff. But let's start with Andrei Kuzmenko. So if you look at the Kuzmenko, Pettersson, Mikheyev line, they are expected to have a bunch of goals. So 7.36 expected. They have 14, so they're well above expected right now, and they are playing exceptionally well. Now, if you look at Kuzmenko, he's 43% owned. He's almost a point per game player, 13 goals, 12 assists, 25 points. And of those 25 points, he's got 7 power play goals, 2 power play assists, so 9 power play points total. But 5-on-5, this line is also very good. You could potentially try to pick up Mikheyev. I think his ownership is a little bit higher. Pettersson is obviously owned up, but Kuzmenko only 43% owned, and this line is performing very well. So just the way to read this graph really quick, goals above expected means they're performing better than what their chances are suggesting they should perform at. And then the higher up on this list that you go, this is the goals for that they actually have. So obviously Robertson, Hintz, Pavelski is the best line in the league right now because they're expected to have a bunch of goals, and they have even more than they're expected to have. They're the number one producing line in the league right now. But then if you take a look a little bit lower, you'll see the Paul Stamkos Killorn line, which is a little bit surprising, but not really, because you're getting exposure to Steven Stamkos. So both of those guys, Nick Paul, who is 45% owned, and Alex Killorn, 30% owned. I've been streaming Killorn all week. Even though it's only a 3-game week, it's been pretty productive so far. Both of those guys are potentially available for you. Paul, 11 goals, 7 assists, 18 points in 25 games, and 159 faceoff wins, so a must-own in faceoff leagues. Alex Killorn, 8 goals, 13 assists, 21 points in 25 games, so a little bit more production out of Killorn. But both of those guys are pretty much available on a lot of 12-team waiver wires and whatnot, especially 10 teams. You're going to have exposure to some of these guys and some other guys that are still owned up on some of these other lines. Now, going down the list, Kirby Dach. Look at this Dach, Suzuki, Caulfield line. Well above expected. They're getting a bunch of goal production, and they're playing very well 5-on-5, despite the fact that Suzuki and Caulfield are also getting it done on the power play. Kirby Dach, only 25% owned. He's got 19 points in 26 games. So this line exposure is very good for Dach. If you look at this is expected goals against and expected goals for. This line is not very good defensively. So in terms of, if you're in a plus-minus league, maybe keep that in mind. Some of these lines that you're going to see way over here, this means they're expected to give up a lot, and then this is expected to score a lot. So down here, this is very strong two-way production. Up here, pretty weak two-way exposure for your line combinations, but that doesn't really matter in fantasy. What matters is offense and getting a lot of points, and that's what this line is doing right now. Now, as we move down the list, a line that I've been mentioning for the last 2 or 3 weeks, Peterka, Cozens, and Quinn. Obviously, you probably just watched them light up the Columbus Blue Jackets the other night. So the ownership levels are basically for different league sizes. So Dylan Cozens, 54% owned, 10 goals, 17 assists, 27 points in 26 games, over a point per game, 8 power play points on top of all of that. He's on PP1. And then if you can't get him, you have Jack Quinn, 20% ownership. He's got 6 goals, 9 assists, 15 points in 26 games, and 5 power play points. And pretty much the same production out of JJ Peterka, only 3% owned, 6 goals, 8 assists, 14 points, and only 2 on the power play. So basically all different league sizes, you can get exposure to this line. This is the second line in Buffalo right now, and they're obviously playing very well, and they have a very good power play in Buffalo and a very high offensive output for the entire team. So this is something that you do want exposure to. Moving down the list, this Hagel, Point, Kucherov line. So let me just quickly go back to the other graph for a second. So the further to the right, that's the more expected goals. So if you see the Robertson, Hintz, Pavelski line, they're second to Kucherov, Hagel, and Point. This is the number one line in the league in terms of expected goals for, but they're performing below expected, almost 5 goals below expected. So what that tells me is that this line still has potential to score even more. And the only way to get exposure to that is through Brandon Hagel right now. 23% owned, 7 goals, 10 assists, 17 points in 25 games. So that's the only guy that you're going to get access to. Braden Point's owned up. Obviously, Kucherov was a first-round pick, so he's owned up as well. Jumping a little bit to the bottom of the list, I just wanted to point this out. The same type of phenomenon for the Moore, Danault, Arvidsson line. And I've been talking about this line the entire season. They've been very productive. They're basically the second line in LA, and all of these guys are potentially ownable. So Trevor Moore is a shot volume guy, 32% owned. Danault's a face-off guy, 30% owned. Arvidsson is usually a shot volume guy. He's having a good week this week. I just picked him up in fantasy this afternoon because he has, if you check the Instagram at data_draft, you can see why I picked up Victor Arvidsson for the rest of the week. But this line is very productive. And if you can see on this previous graph right here, Moore, Danault, Arvidsson right up there with some of the best lines in the league, offensively speaking, but they're just not getting the production right now, which is why their goals sit right around the average line, 7.6. They're at 8. So they're pretty much playing average in terms of their actual goal production, but I would expect them to break out soon just based on the quality of their chances. Same thing with this Zucker, Malkin, Rust line, a little bit below expectations, but if you look here, very good two-way line. They're actually playing pretty good defense, and they're getting some offensive production, or at least chances. And I would think that those chances start to turn into goals any day now. Rust is in the 60s in ownership. Malkin's even higher. Zucker was ownable for a little bit. I haven't checked on his ownership level lately, but he was a guy that I was streaming earlier in the season. Now, there's 2 other lines we didn't get to yet. Let's look at number 6, and that is McCann, Beniers, Eberle. And basically, everybody's sleeping on the Seattle Kraken. They were not a good offensive team last year. They are a top 10 offensive team this year and a top 10 power play this year. And you do want exposure to the Seattle Kraken. So McCann, one of the hottest goal scorers in the league right now, believe it or not, I highlighted that in a previous video. 16% owned, 12 goals, 5 assists, 17 points in 22 games with 5 power play points. Matty Beniers had a great week last week, 46% owned, 10 goals, 11 assists, 21 points in 25 games, 5 power play points. And then Jordan Eberle, 20% owned. He has 7 points in his last 6 games since getting onto this line and starting to find some chemistry. So any of these guys are potentially ownable for most league sizes, 12-team leagues and maybe 14-team leagues. As you get into the deeper leagues, maybe they're not there for you. But everybody's sleeping on Jared McCann. Everybody knows about Beniers. People seem to know about Eberle from name value, but all of these guys are pretty much available on most waiver wires. And then last but not least, we have the Vegas Golden Knights. So let's go back to this list really quick. You can see this line, the Marchessault, Karlsson, Smith line, very good two-way line. They're not expected to give up a lot, and they're expected to score a lot. Same thing with the Eichel, Stevenson, Stone line. So when they have all of their pieces, which they didn't last night, they were missing Jack Eichel, and that did definitely hurt them. But when they have their full complement, their top 6 is very productive. They're very strong two-way lines. And then if you look at that line, the Eichel, Stevenson, Stone line, one of the best offensive lines in the league. I believe Stevenson's at 75%. He's the most ownable of that bunch, but still pretty unownable. And then you look at the Marchessault, Karlsson, Smith line. They're below expected right now. So this could be a potential chance to break out for some of these guys. And their ownerships are kind of all over the map. If you look at, just for a second there, Marchessault is owned up mainly because of his shot volume. But if you look at Reilly Smith, 58% owned, so not there for everybody. 12 goals, 6 assists, 18 points in 28 games. Nothing crazy, but he's got 5 power play points, and more importantly for certain leagues with shorthanded goals, he's got 3 shorthanded goals on the year. So that's something to keep in mind. But the guy who may be there for you on your wire is Karlsson, 33% owned, 6 goals, 12 assists, 18 points in 28 games. And again, I would expect this line to start breaking out when they get their full complement of their top 6 healthy, when Eichel's back and everything is moving the way that it should. They were on a little bit of a slump through the month of November, but they were playing incredibly good hockey at the beginning of the year. I would wait for them to have a good week and then try to pick up one of the components of this line. But this is basically how you can use this data. If you look here, this is a stream that I mentioned on the Instagram and a bunch of different places. Perfetti. on the top line with Scheifele and Wheeler. The only reason that they're here is because they haven't been together that long. So 7 goals for, they're expected to have about 5, so a little bit above expected, but they should be climbing as we move into the weekend. Particularly, they have 3 games going from now until Sunday, so that's good exposure if you're looking for a waiver pickup today. And then some of these other lines, for the most part, are owned up. Obviously, Hyman, McDavid, Nugent-Hopkins, Oliver Wahlstrom might be there for you, Barzal, Bailey. They're pretty much owned up. The Islanders are actually scoring quite a bit. I did want to mention Anthony Beauvillier for deep leagues. 1% owned, 11 points in 26 games, so nothing crazy there. He's very streaky. So if you're looking for exposure to this line, which you should be because they're performing better than expected, they have 14 goals on the season, right about the same amount as the Kuzmenko, Pettersson, Mikheyev line. But Beauvillier is only 1% owned, so you could potentially gain access to him. A couple other deep league plays. Kevin Labanc, if this line is together, they're not necessarily always together, but if they are, they're very productive. 15 goals for Labanc, 2% owned, 6 goals, 10 assists, 16 points in 28 games. Nothing crazy there. He was getting some PP one time early in the season. I'd have to double check and make sure that he's still getting that power play time. And then just another quick anomaly that I kind of wanted to point out if I can find it really quick, because some of these guys are hiding. But the Jamie Benn, Ty Dellandrea, and Wyatt Johnston line, they've been playing very well. I think they're on this graph right here. If I can just find it. They're right over here. So they're playing better than expected. Expected to have 8 goals for. They have a little bit more than that. And they're right here. They're hiding behind this LA logo right here. So 12 goals on the season, and you can get access to Dellandrea, 2% owned. He's got 13 points in 26 games and 2 game winners. So if that's part of your point weighting, then definitely take a look at Dellandrea if you're in a deep league. Wyatt Johnston, 7 goals at 10 points in 26 games. So not a lot of point production, but you're riding the coattails of Jamie Benn, who's having a great season. So if you're in a really deep league and you need those 1 or 2% ownership guys, you could potentially look at Dellandrea and Johnston. But yeah, some of these guys, you're not going to want necessarily the bottom corner here. This line is just snake bitten. They haven't been together in quite a while because of that. You could see the DeBrusque, Bergeron, Marchand line. I'm not sure if they're still together, but they were a little bit snake bitten. But some of these lines are just not getting a ton of goal production, and they're below expected in terms of their who's hiding behind here? Stasny, Stepan, and Nason. Yeah, so they're pretty bad in terms of goals below expected, and they only have 1 goal on the season. So tend to stay away from some of these guys. Obviously, you're not going to want to stay away from Bunting and some of these, Ovechkin exposures and whatnot. But this is the guys that are hot right here. These are the guys that are about to break out or are currently breaking out. So this is how you can use the data to make better, more informed decisions about your waiver wire pickups. So hopefully this provided some value to you. Hopefully it helped you out a little bit. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section below. But thanks again for watching. And again, if you want access to this graph, I have these 2 for forwards. I have defense here, and I've got a bunch of other charts and visualizations. You can get access to those in the Patreon link in the description below. Any support helps the channel. I'm just trying to keep this going and keep growing before I run out of money and have to go and get a job doing something that pays a little bit better. But any support helps, and I appreciate all of you very much for watching and subscribing. So I want to thank you for that, and I will see you in the next one.